Greetings once again, heroes and villains. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with My Hero Academia, where previously more of All For One's past was revealed. As it turns out, it wasn't long after All For One's brother Yoichi was rescued by Kudo that All For One ended up killing him, and subsequently took his left hand. It was only after his brother's death that All For One discovered that his brother also had a meta ability. He had originally assumed that when they were infant, he had simply taken it. But no, before Yoichi's death, it was in fact passed on to Kudo. In fact, it might have been at Yoichi's death, when Kudo was splashed with Yoichi's blood, that the power was bestowed upon Kudo, the power of One for All. We learned the third user's name, Bruce, who analyzed Kudo's body and found that Kudo had another meta ability after studying enough, one that comes off as a dud, like with most other people who usually try to analyze or replicate Izuku's abilities over the course of the story. Kudo thought of it as Yoichi's very will living on inside of him. But for All For One, he saw it as something he needed to have, no matter what. The last remnant of his brother, the last remnant of his brother's defiance. And so, as we know, he goes on to spend all of his time hunting down each user, but always coming up just shy of claiming the power. We had already seen the death of Kudo, but we were also shown the death of Bruce, impaled, and, well, Hikage, who claimed the ability after Bruce, but ultimately died while he was in hiding, training up the ability, not knowing that if you have a quirk and then obtain One For All, it kind of shortens your lifespan. Most other users never really had to deal with that, considering, they tended not to live too long. But while this was going on, All For One started a cult, which is how he met Garaki, the doctor who would help him time and time again. We saw the ends of Banjo and N, not end, N. And even when Nana Shimura gained the ability from N, N's death was particularly bad. He was cut right in half. We even got to see how devastating the final blow All Might did against All For One that pretty much blew off the entirety of the top of his head. He was, by all technical means, dead, but leave it to Garaki to even make it so that a corpse lived on. And it's during All For One's fight with Bakugo, who reminds him so much of Kudo, we even find out that out of sheer anger, All For One wiped out not just Kudo, but his entire bloodline. So while initially he thought maybe Bakugo was related to Kudo, he's starting to realize it's just the eye, the uncanny resemblance in the eye. And so, knowing that he's burning through what remaining time he has left between all the attacks he's received and the just rewind still enacted on his body, he uses one final ultimate move, Omnifactor Unleash, all for one goal, unleashing every quirk he has built up, turning him into a massive Akira-like giant jet engine, all for the purpose of simultaneously killing Bakugo, making his way to Tomura, and transferring out of his rapidly regressing body. Will this really be the end of everything? I mean, one way or another, it's coming to an end. But will All For One achieve his one goal? And if not, the question is, how does Bakugo stop an unstoppable force that he even admits is a little much for him? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, My Hero Academia number 409, Quirk Explosion! And man, we are really taking it back to the origin. First we see All For One's birth, and now we're seeing Bakugo's birth. I love that his dad is just bawling upon seeing his son, and Mama Bakugo was... I'm glad that they're showing labor ain't no joke. It's interesting to actually see how, Horikoshi is actually doing a good job of depicting how kind of weird, freshly newborn babies are. As they are allowed to develop a little bit more into the actual world, they get their, nicer qualities and all that. But when they're first out of the womb, it was like, ooh. And we get a flashback to after Izuku and Bakugo fought for the second time, where he said, I'm gonna make all my skills my own and keep rising. And I actually don't remember when this was, but him saying, my explosion can pull off anything I want it to. Was this when they were first about to take on Shigaraki? And he even flashes back to when we first met Deku and Bakugo was bullying him. And as All For One the massive engine of destruction approaches Bakugo, who's using his explosion to hover in the air. Bakugo thinks, Izuku, I won't stand in your way anymore. Jeez. It's just this massive amalgam of meat just taking off towards Bakugo. All Might yelling out, "Dodge it, kid!" as he's knocked back. He and the little sliver of edge shot are knocked back by the sheer force of All for One being propelled forward. Bakugo holds up his hand saying, "Please, blow up," he thinks, and he shouts, "Blow the hell up!" Just the blood splattered across his face and eyes and everything. All for One just screaming as he rockets forward. Ooh, and with nice pinpoint accuracy, Bakugo manages to explode All for One's head. But as All for One's head regenerates back, he thinks, how can this be? The boy didn't take any clear action just now. Has his explosion ascended to a new level? As Bakugo gets closer to All for One, he says, "The rain's putting a damper on my oomph, so I fired off some coated bead." Ew. All for One is taken aback as Bakugo explains. How is he explaining this in like a fraction of a second? Beads of explosive sweat coated with regular sweat, I mean. I shot him off without triggering him, hoping that something else might set him off on the delay. So he's propelling his sweat forward with his explosive sweat, so the other sweat will explode later down the line. I don't feel like that's how that would work, but whatever. And All for One thinks, back there? Straight into my mouth? Ew. At the last second? Man, Bakugo's getting some pinpoint accuracy with this. And as Bakugo races in on All for One, he says, if nothing else, I've always earned kudos for my intuition. The one quirk I've got is enough. And yeah, he's making it enough. I gotta give it to that. And Bakugo remembers All Might telling him, the more damage he takes, the younger he regresses. Get the picture? Oh, he got the picture all right. Well, All for One thinks, all the damage has thrown my powers into disarray, but I need only to unleash them once more. And All for One screams out, this is my tail! Move aside, you extra! You nobody! Oh god, he sounds so much like Bakugo. And Bakugo slams into All for One with Howitzer impact! Once again, utterly decimating All for One's main body. All Might looking on in shock with the little edge shot. But Bakugo's not done. Ooh, as he just unleashes a flurry of explosions. And it's obvious that All for One is trying to fight back, sending whatever he can Bakugo's way. And Bakugo is just setting off explosion after explosion after explosion. Just yelling, get wrecked! Like he's just blowing up everything that comes his way, even remotely in his direction. It's like he's firing off explosions from like every section of his body. Wherever any sweat can get propelled out, he is letting it rip. And as he just peppers All for One with massive explosions continuously. He's carpet bombing this dude. He yells, and shut the hell up! All for One thinks, something's off. My quirk factors aren't mingling properly. How could this mere fireworks be tearing them apart? Because my body's grown too young? Too delicate? And a voice calls out from within his mindscape, saying, all those nasty negative emotions have got you in a tailspin, so you're losing control over us. And inside, we see Hawks schmoozing it up with all of the other entities in All for One, as he says, check it out. This joint is my fan meetup venue now. And he points to All for One saying, swallowed up by Shigaraki, huh? I kinda like the idea that it's the pure accumulation of all of that. It's just like, you don't just bring in the ability, you're bringing a piece of those people as well. And that many pieces of people, you've hit the capacity. Essentially, All for One hit the max capacity on what he could actually contain before all those little pieces of people started fighting back. And out in the real world, Bakugo just rams his hand into All for One's face, exploding it as he says, get it straight, this is our tail. And he slams All for One into the ground with a massive explosion. As All Might watches on, he thinks, little by little, the damage everyone dealt, all that built-up aggravation, at long last, yeah, like, let's not get it twisted. It took a lot to get to this point. From the fight over with Tokoyami to this, like, think about all the people who had to, like, just be, like, beating him down, get knocked away. Someone else comes in, beats him down, get knocked away. It's just one after another, after another, after another, after another, after another. I love that you have Bakugo's parents watching, and even Yuichi senses that his brother's about to come to an end. And we see All for One, probably, is he like an infant now? I can't make it out, but you see like him in a crater, barely being able to say anything. His All Might thinks for certain this time All for One is. And Bakugo says, yeah, I never could have hoped to beat that, at least not alone. Bakugo admitting he couldn't have done this by himself. Damn. Damn. Ooh, I think Bakugo broke his arm with that last attack. Oh, how very Deku-like. Yeah, Bakugo broke his arm with that last attack. Oh, I gotta say, I've griped and I've complained about no, you go back to my video about Bakugo dying and I'm all emotional and stuff and, you know, being pissed off at the way he came back and all that, and I'm just like, you know what, if this is how it ends, good. You know, after all this feels like, oh yeah, because ultimately, it's like Bakugo was fighting an aspect of himself. Despite their different circumstances and their births and their upbringing and all that, they were both very selfish people. But Bakugo was able to change. And All for One, he had years longer than anyone else. And it took Bakugo being humbled for him to finally start seeing things in a different light, to fail. But All for One, by the time he actually started not being able to get what he wanted anymore, he was already an adult and too set in his way. I mean, you easily could see this as All for One did himself in. He thought by acquiring all these powers, all these abilities, it would do nothing but benefit him. But we've seen time and time again, from the situation with Jiro to even the situation with Shigaraki and even Star and Stripe, trying to take in all these powers, all these strong-willed people whose abilities don't just bring the abilities, it brings the personalities as well, even if it's just a small fragment of someone with a strong will. And we've seen how wills resonate in that subspace of the mind. I mean, shoot, we've seen this for the longest time. The idea that those abilities and personalities could actually fight back to some degree. It's those wills that kept All for One at bay every time he tried to steal One for All. It makes sense that even what he's accumulated would bite him in the ass at some point, even if it was just a minute way, just not working in harmony, undermining what he did to some degree. It essentially took the equivalent of a superpowered army working both inside and out to finally do this guy in. Because, as cheesy as it sounds, the one thing he always underestimates is people's will. He never thinks of that as a factor, and that's what's ultimately doing him in. The fact that he just could not accept that other people, while maybe not physically strong, have an inner strength that you just can't shake, especially, surprise, surprise, when all come together. And if that is what has done him in, bravo. Bravo. I actually kind of love. And oof, I'm gonna love seeing this animated. This was pretty damn good. But it's entirely possible. It is entirely possible All for One still gets back up from this. Although I'm not sure, because it's just like, he even looked like a kid for a while there. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about toddler All for One waddling around being like, I will kill you. That might be both sad and hilarious at that point. I also just kind of love that his ultimate ace in the hole, which was the regression bullet, I mean, more than anything else, is the thing that was doing him in. I mean, it was a great way of keeping him going, but to have something that would uncontrollably keep rewinding you, I mean, it saved him, but it's literally undoing him too. That, I mean, it's irony upon irony. Like, there's so many layers and levels to all of this. I feel like a good YouTuber could come up with, like, a great list of just the irony of everything that All For One has suffered through during the course of all these fights. Like, from Gigantomachia's betrayal to Shigaraki shutting him out and not even really acknowledging him to a certain degree. Honestly, the funniest thing to find out wouldn't have so much been that Bakugo was related to Kudo, that in fact Bakugo to some degree is related to All For One. That would be the irony there. That would be the biggest irony. And how do I feel about Bakugo's evolving quirk? It's anime BS, but at the same time, it's like he's got that adrenaline pumping hard. I mean, to be able to launch his sweat with one explosion and detonate that sweat at a later point when it's at where he needs it to go, that's really kind of insane, but it's fun. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If this is the end of All For One, do you think it's a good one? Or do you think he still has one more trick up his sleeve? Or is it gonna be kind of like in Full Metal Alchemist when Envy met their end? Sad and kind of pathetic. I want to hear from you. So like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din. Thanks so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye.